Ms. Munson.
What's not working in Springfield is the leadership that has led us down this road to bankruptcy, spending more money than we have, borrowing money to pay our bills, but not having a mechanism to pay back that borrowing. What we really need to do is take a look at how we budget in the state of Illinois. In Illinois, we budget, we base our budgets on layers. So every administration before us has their budget and their budget priorities somewhere in the current budget. And we need to dismantle that budget, take a look at a forensic audit, find out what it is we're spending money on, and then set real priorities that meet the needs of our community. One of the areas that I would cut, and I would look for cuts, is the waste and fraud in Medicaid spending. A recent federal report looked at Medicaid spending across the states and found that we could save 10% or $1 billion if we were to invest in Medicaid.
Munson. A follow-up for Mr. Farnham. This is 45 seconds.
One of the things that I discovered, I'm on the Human Services Committee in Springfield, and one of the questions I asked was the director a year ago was, how much spending do you have in overtime in this department? They didn't know, but they looked it up and they got back to me and they said $58 million. And I said, $58 million for overtime? And their answer was, well, there was a hiring freeze, we haven't hired any people, and through attrition now, the overtime costs are rising. If that's going on in one department, what's going on in other departments? What about drivers, I asked her. Well, they told me that they're trying to eliminate the drivers and eliminate some of the vehicles. It may seem small, but $60 million is exactly the point.
Mr. Farnham. Ms. Munson, follow-up.
I guess I just want to add that other areas within the budget that we can cut are some of the legislative perks, airplanes for our leaders, reduce some of our legislative budgets within our district, and then also reduce the number of legislative committees that we have. We have a committee, and for every committee we have a spokesperson who earns an extra stipend for being a committee chair, and a lot of these committees are looking at 1 or 2 bills a term, and so we need to look at those and reduce them and really dismantle our budget and take a look at what we're spending.
The next question, we'll start with Ms. Munson. Deals with education. Again, this is in 3 parts. What are your views on the ways that Illinois funds public education? What changes will you support to assure Illinois students have adequate resources and receive a fair and equitable education? And do you support any specific legislation or proposals? Ms. Munson.
The best way to fund education is to make it a top priority. In this last budget, our governor put education on the top of the chopping block when they were looking for savings. We also need to look at how we fund schools that don't have wherewithal and really laser point target those schools. Some schools who have less money do very well in providing the education and have great outcomes. Others who have more money don't do as well. We need to identify the issues that cause that and target resources, whether it's teacher mentoring or principal induction mentoring, or whether or not it's reducing class sizes in those schools, because that's going to help them succeed.
Mr. Farnham.
I would agree that school funding should be absolutely a top priority. Everything leads after that. Social programs going up in cost because of lack of education. I represent the 43rd District. I passed a bill 113-1 to correct the funding situation that we've had in this in our U46 for 8 or 10 years. We've been losing money. I corrected that situation by working with other people on both sides of the floor and passing a bipartisan bill that would have corrected that, and then the governor vetoed it. I thought that was absolutely terrible. U46 deserves the money that it is supposed to be getting, and I will fight to override that veto. This is not politics. This is 41,000 children and their parents in our community.
Follow-up, Ms. Munson.
And this is one of the areas that I agree with my opponent. This money is rightfully belongs to U46, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure this legislation passes and gets signed, by the governor, so that the veto is overruled at this point, or if it doesn't happen, we come back in the next legislative session and work hard every single day to get that legislation passed. I know that when I passed fast growth funding for our school districts, it was for our school districts that were experiencing rapid growth, and they needed some specific dollars so that we could accommodate the fact that schools fund, or that the state of Illinois funds school after the fact. So after a year, they get their money.
Mr. Farnham.
Again, I would reiterate that. I think it's we have to set priorities, and we have to do that through the budget process by determining how much money we actually have to spend. You in your home and me in my home, we determine how much money we have to spend on bills, and then we determine what we have left. Can we go to breakfast this morning and to a movie tonight, or can we only go to one? And believe me, I've seen a lot of people in this district who have to make those choices. The state of Illinois needs to make the same choices, and I will fight to see that we change the whole budget process to that process.
The third question, we'll start with Mr. Farnham. The question is regarding campaign finance, contribution limits. On January 1st, 2011, state law will impose limits on contribution to candidates from all sources in the primary election and from all sources except political parties and legislative leader committees in the general election. Do you support legislation expanding the limits to include party and legislative leader contributions in the general election?
I'd like to see the legislation first, and I would tend to support that type of a restriction. But we must make sure that we don't exclude people from being able to run for office merely because they aren't rich. We've got to have a level playing field so that all people can run for office. And that's my biggest fear. I really would like to see us get away from this having to raise money for campaigns. All the money that goes to campaigns could sure make a big dent in school funding and all kinds of funding. When you talk about $30 million to run for mayor of Chicago, come on. We've got to find a better way to do it. But we've got to empower all people, not just the rich.
Ms. Munson.
The campaign finance so-called reforms that passed that limited you and other local people from contributing, or capped you or other people from contributing, would have been a great first step if it also would have included the political leaders who are dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into campaigns. They're controlling our local races here in our community, and now we don't have a balanced a field for you to balance off what a Democrat or Republican leader can spend on a campaign. And I think we need to do that. We need to put caps on all of our legislative leaders and all of our party leaders so that they're at the same level as you and I and all the other interests in the state.